Uh, what I think about diversity and inclusion, it's a wide umbrella of many things these days because you have so many people to include when you're talking about diversity. You have people with physical limitations, you have the deaf, the blind, you have people with mental illnesses, you have the LGBT community. There are just so many areas to include when you talk about diversity, not just black and white or male and female. It's a wide umbrella of people and situations. I mean, it's about representation. Everybody wants to be seen in various roles and have many opportunities in life. It's not just about, bringing everybody in. It's about more understanding what everyone's situation is. Because there's no two people in wheelchairs that are the same. There's no two blind people who have the same situations, or the deaf, or whatever the situation is. There's no two people the same. We get all folded into one big category, but it's not always the same thing. So it's more about understanding and having the conversation and opening it up more. Oh, I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, and I was born in New York, but I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. And what that showed me was that I wanted to get out. I was always a big kid with a lot of imagination. I always wanted to see the world. I always wanted to do more things than just be in a small town. Love the small town culture, love the food, love the people, but I always dreamed of bigger things for myself. Well, I'm very thankful because growing up, my parents always taught me that I could do anything and I could be anything, regardless of having a disability, regardless of being black in America, and so on and so forth. It was always this thing of whatever you want to do, you can do it as long as you study hard and you master it, and you just go after it, and have that tenacity to want to succeed. And because I had so many situations of operations and recovery and trying to get past that to go back to school for many, many times. I think that taught me to just find that fortitude within myself to stay strong and stay determined. And with their encouragement and the family around me and my community, I was always able to do that. But not everybody has that sense of strength and determination. But I think that once you find it within yourself, you can just do anything. Because in a situation like because I grew up in the '80s, and so you had a situation where there wasn't always ADA and all these laws that would allow for accessibility and all that getting around. It was never an easy road. There's always an obstacle. But I think that what I learned from it was that I can overcome anything. I just had to try. My father's rule was there's no pity party. There were no lazy people. We all had to get up. We all had functions. We all had goals. We all had chores. So everybody had something to do and everybody had something to contribute. And I think that was one of the big motivating factors. My mom was also very active in the community, and she still is. And I think that always pushed me to move forward and to try to succeed. So I was never held back by that because what holds you back is your own self. Oh, my college experience was a great one. I was so thankful and so happy to get away from my small town, and I went to a major university in the South, the University of South Carolina, as a matter of fact. I'm a proud Gamecock, and major university, huge, sat right in the city of Columbia, South Carolina, major football school. It was just good to get away because I was able to encounter a variety of different kind of ethnicities and diversities and just different types of people for different parts of the world and different mindsets. And that was an eye-opener for me. Plus, I was able to be exposed to actually more disabled people because growing up, I wasn't around a lot of disabled people. But going to college, I was able to see more and experience more people that were blind, people that were deaf, so on and so forth. It was an eye-opening experience. At college, I was and still am a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, founded January 9th, 1914 at Howard University. So yes, I am a proud member of a historically black fraternity. And that was one of those things, once again, I stood out because in many cases throughout my life, I've always been the first one to do something, the trailblazer, as it were. But, the brothers at the time, it was, I was that oddity. No one expected me on the campus to be pledging in a fraternity. And I pledged in the '80s when it was about pledging. So I had no qualms about it. I knew I had to do it. There are Greek members in my family, and so I wanted to continue that tradition. And I found Phi Beta Sigma, and they welcomed me into the organization.
Things that you
Well,
can
you know, for me, not only was I about being a leader within the organization, but I was also the party boy. So I was at the parties, I was at step shows, I did all the road tripping, I did everything else you traditionally hear about fraternity people in college. You know, I didn't shy away from any of that, and in fact, I was quite good at it. But you know, that was just a part of the college experience for me because I wanted to really embrace the whole college experience. I wasn't going to be limited by what this wheelchair forced me to deal with, but I wanted to experience it. Well, you know, the thing about the ADA, and thanks to George Bush Sr., I think that it opened up a lot of doors and it forced companies and businesses and homes even to be more accessible for people with disabilities and just workplaces and so on and so forth so that it's a law and it's a requirement. Not everywhere is good at it. I mean, I live here in New York City and there's always an obstacle in transit and trying to get around. Some of the buildings are old. You know, we have cobblestone streets in certain areas. So it's not always easy, but at least there are laws to protect me when I'm in a situation and that's a wonderful thing. Because yes, when I travel, I do run into situations where they're just not as up to speed as we are in America. But you know, the world is changing, and so that's also changing as you travel abroad. I'm not disabled. I'm a person with a disability. Then the difference is, you know, nothing can hold me back. This is an accessory. You know what I'm saying? This gets me around. This helps me to move, but I can do whatever I want to do. I might have to come on edit another route, but I can still get there. And you know, learning that as a young kid is different from someone if something happened to you suddenly as an adult and how you adapt to that. It could be a little harder. But as a kid, you just learn to accept where you are and move to the next thing. Because it's all about survival. And kids are much quicker at picking that up than adults are because you don't have the burden of what you already knew and all the time that you knew that you lived a certain way. So I was lucky in that way that I learned early to adapt so quickly. But um, you know, and I have, from my understanding, I have a rare case of cerebral palsy that only affected my legs and my lower extremities, not any of the other cognitive issues that people have. And, you know, my limbs aren't twisted or distorted or anything like that. So it only affects the connection between the brain and the muscles in my legs. Thankfully, and that comes from a lack of oxygen at birth as the baby's traveling through the birth canal. It's some cutoff of oxygen that causes these things to happen. So it's literally a birth defect, but and not a disease per se. But you know, it's just learning how to adapt to that. And for many years, I walked, and then you know, I had an operation that did not work out the way they planned for it to work, and I ended up using crutches and canes and so on and so forth. And I started using a wheelchair in high school predominantly just to be able to get around the big campus of the school. And then I just started using it in college and so on in my adulthood. Just made it easier to maneuver. I have always been interested in advertising. My entire college career was centered around journalism. Initially, I started out in broadcast, as most journalism students do, but then my eyes were open to the world of advertising and public relations. And from that point on in college, that's been my trajectory. And now I'm here on Madison Avenue working in New York City. As for my early mentors in the advertising and publishing industry, I have to give credit to Renee Ford, who, because as soon as I got out of college, I worked at a small manufacturing company in their marketing department. From there, I moved to the state newspaper in Columbia, South Carolina. And the advertising director there at the time, his name was Renee Ford. He was a big influence of mine. He literally gave me an opportunity to come into the newspaper when there really wasn't one, but he saw my potential, he saw my talent, and he said, you know, I'm going to give you an opportunity to make something of yourself here in the advertising department within the state newspaper. So that's how it really started. And I'm thankful to him every day. But he gave me some good advice coming in the room. You know, in my early 20s, he was like, okay, you're going to come in here, you're going to work hard, and you're going to do what you have to do. I know you have the talent, and I want you to show it. And he was always about that. And everything that I did in that place, I stayed there for 6 years, and it was just a great experience. I learned so much about advertising. I learned so much about publishing, and it was just a great learning experience. They connected me with all kind of other groups within the community, ad club, Toastmasters. They groomed me, and it was just a wonderful experience, and I'm so thankful for it every day. They made the opportunity happen, and after Renee left, there were others there. There was Mort Goldstrom. He literally said, "Okay, you're going to be this sales rep. You're going to be an outside sales rep," because that was also one of the first times someone with a disability was an outside sales rep. So I would actually go to the clients, drive there, meet them, pick up the ads, go over the business, and talk about the things. There wasn't anybody else doing that, So at that time, especially, and I'm thankful for them to give me the opportunity. And it was just once again having to be the trailblazer for everything. But I'm used to it now. I'll carry it. Well, that was one of the key issues that made me decide to go into advertising, because growing up in the 80s, you rarely saw any blacks on television, whether they be on commercials or on TV shows or anything like that. It was just, or we were only in certain roles. And what used to disturb me so much on television was seeing we were always the black person in television commercials was always dancing into some situation, or there was a comedy skit. There was some other element to it. They were the maids and the cleaners and all these other things. And I wanted to change. I wanted to be a part of the change in that, in how we were represented in advertising. That was my main issue. Well, from the realm of advertising, it's about multicultural casting and see it, like you said in your question, you're seeing more interracial couples, you're seeing more diverse kind of couples, gay couples, straight couples, and so on and so forth. I think it's about trying to show the world that we represent the world, because we're trying to look more like the places we talk about. Well, back in the early days of my advertising career here in New York, I was part of an organization called African Americans in Advertising, and our goal was to find a collective of people like ourselves, because there wasn't a lot of times when you'd walk into agencies, you didn't see a lot of yourself represented. There would be one or two here and there in various departments, but it was about coming together and forming a collective and sharing information and networking and helping to build our careers from the ground up, because a lot of us we were all in our 20s, young, broke, but excited about the industry and wanting to make change in the industry and trying to grow ourselves there. From that organization, there have been other organizations that have sprung up, and now we have a wonderful organization called Ad Color, which I'm affiliated with. I'm not currently a member, but it's a great organization. It's still living on the foundation of trying to better the advertising community, not only for African Americans, but Latinos, Asians, people with disabilities, the LGBT community. Everybody is coming together because everybody needs to be represented when you're branding messages to the world. And that's what these organizations are for. Diversity and inclusion are the things that's going to change the world. Until we start to see the world as a little bit of everybody involved in it, you're never going to get anywhere. We're always going to be in the same stop point. Certain people are going to rise, certain people are going to fall. But until we realize that we all have to come together and work together, and we can sell brands and do all these things, but everybody has to be represented, because you have a big world out here, and we're a global economy. So it can't just be about what America's doing or what Asia's doing or it's got to be broader than that, and we've got to start to see everybody, because once you start seeing yourself represented, you want to be a part of that because you feel like they represent you. What I feel like advertising is trying to do to bring about more inclusion and more diversity, they're just trying to speak to the issues. That's why you're seeing it represented more in the commercials that you see, in the social messaging that you get, because it's not just about television commercials anymore. It's all about the internet and all the platforms that people are using and how you get your messages. A lot of people are getting their messages on mobile devices and so on and so forth, but you're not just seeing your typical branded message anymore, because brands are wanting to be outside of that locked in space. They want to be part of experiences, and because experiences include everybody, diversity has to be a big key to that. Well, okay. People that I mentor, many times I've been asked to speak with lots of high school kids and kids in schools. I do that a lot here in New York and in New Jersey with local schools there because I feel like a lot of times they want to bring me in to show kids that you can do it too. You know what I mean? If this guy's doing it and he's dealing with everything that he's dealing with, you can do it too. So a lot of times that gets to be my message. And kids are just fascinated in the fact that not only I live with a disability, but I'm working in advertising and in film and media because for many, many years, you know, poor kids, black kids, minority kids didn't see themselves in these kinds of industries. But now the world is opening up. You have the tech community, you have media. It's not just about preaching, teaching, sports, and being a lawyer or being an engineer or being a doctor. There are many fields that we can go into now, coding and all the technology industries. Women are doing great things, men are doing great things. All these different minority groups are making big strides in various industries these days. So I think that what I represent is what you can do when people don't expect you to. Yeah, mentoring is important. I've always been striving to find good mentors, and I call them allies now because a lot of times you need allies in what you're doing and how you're trying to grow not only your career but your life. And you know we get influenced by many people, and I think that it's always good to have somebody in your corner that supports you and gives you good advice about career planning and development. Some of the leaders in the advertising industry as it relates to diversity would be Tiffany R. Warren and Doug Melville for sure. They are in the forefront, especially with my company and what they're trying to do to make change within the advertising industry on multiple levels. And you know, they're not just about the front-facing stuff that the customers see, but they're also in the boardrooms and dealing with it from a management level. So I think that's where you have to make some inroads too, and along with inside the office itself. My personal interest. Right now, I've been spending a lot of time working out and about fitness. In the last few years, I decided to make fitness one of my main goals. I've lost a bunch of weight. I've been working out 4 times a week, you know, with trainers and trying to get my body in order because just because I have a disability doesn't mean I can't do that. And I work hard at just trying to stay strong and to stay fit because as I get older, I want to live a healthy and full life. Because what they don't talk about with people with disabilities is how you get older and what happens to your body and what changes and all those things. So you have to adapt to that too. Because I never had that conversation with my parents as I ended up with crutches and wheelchairs and so on and so forth. So I have to learn that as an adult and how I plan to age into the rest of my life. But I want to do that being fit and healthy. You know, it's about eating right and being healthy, you know, staying healthy. I work out. Like I said, I'm all about the weightlifting, a lot of weightlifting, a lot of cardio work, battle ropes, and so on and so forth, because you got to get that heart rate up. I also ride the bike because I can do that too. And contrary to popular opinion, everybody in a wheelchair is not paralyzed, folks. So, you know, you can move that body. If you have the ability to do it, they want you to do it. That's why you'll never see me using a motorized chair or anything like that, because if you don't need one, you need to keep moving your body as much as possible. And, you know, the question that I get all the time is that, well, why don't you get a motorized wheelchair? Why do I need one? If I can use this one, why do I need to get another one? But that's the main question. I think people think that, oh, this will help him. Oh, this will make it better. And even in the gym, you know, I get people that just stare at me. They're just amazed while I'm on these machines and doing all this workout. And then they'll literally stop my workout and say, oh, my God, you're just an inspiration. I'm so glad you're here. You've motivated me. No, you need to motivate yourself. I'm doing the same workout you're doing in the same place. So why am I your motivation? Just get up and do it. And that's one thing I learned. I used to be a fat ass. I used to sit and eat and watch TV and do all these things. But it's really about getting up and getting your body moving. And I also love to travel. I want to see the world. I want to do more of that. I love music. You know, so it's all about that. I go out with my friends, you know, bar hopping, movies, and so on and so forth. I have a podcast that I do, Beer, Bourbon, and a Movie. And it's all about sharing experiences with my friend from film school. We used to sit around and we used to talk about movies after class, and we would always be drinking. She was always having her beer, and I'd always have my bourbon, and we would just reiterate what we felt about the movies that we had just seen in class, and that's kind of where the podcast came from. And it's just been a great experience, something that was just a little throwback idea from what we used to do in film school that's really taken off now and become very successful. So I'm very happy about that. And I never really saw myself as a podcaster, even though I used to work in radio in college. I never really thought that it was going to be something that I'd really get into, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad to see it growing.